Okay, so over the break, I kind of tools in these masks that we've made so far. Uh, this is the one I'm having a problem with. Um, and by going back and messing with my original, just doing original settings really didn't solve my problem. So we're going to have to deal with that here. We'll just make it better. And the reason I'm having a problem with it is we've got one material, two materials, and then I'm seeing this light gray underrepresented. There's too much of this one and not enough of this one for my liking. That's the problem that I'm having. And then the other thing that I noticed between this version and the one that I had originally made was this one's got a lot more water, and I think I like it with a little bit less water. So let's go back and fix that. In fact, it's a good example because it'll show us how these things are really easy to work with when you've got them in a library and linked. So this is ledge here, which is giving us the information for water versus land. So let's go back to the original. And this is where my settings were off. I had, this is lower, I think, yeah, kind of more like that. So we had um, a lot less water. So the black here is water, and the white is land. So I think that's better. It was just not enough rock in the previous, in the one that we had made. So I'm just doing that. Now I'm going to save this. I can either click up here or I can just do Control S for save. And when we go back to this graph that we have it linked to, those changes are reflected here, which is nice. So that's kind of given us more rock to play with. And then before we go on to make the other material, I want to sort this problem out. So we're kind of going off script a little bit. So we got to go back here, and I think so let's go back to the original. This is Rock Swan. I think the quickest and easiest way to solve this problem is to kind of double it up a little bit. So we're going to get a pixel processor. In fact, why don't we just copy this one? Because it's mostly, I'm going to just delete this. It's already got a rotate on it, and it'll save us. So I'm double clicking on this. I'm going to edit. So we don't really need any of this stuff. We're just going to get rid of these two nodes. And we're going to replace that with a constant. And we'll just do 0.25, which will give us roughly 90 degrees. So that's a quarter turn, because it wants that information in turns. Right. So that's this. So what we're yet it looks, yeah, okay, yeah, it's different. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to blend these two, and we're going to make it a straight up blend. We're going to use lighten, and that's going to give us more white without expending too much energy. So hopefully that won't be too much white. We'll find out. So again, we can save this and go back to our other graph. Yeah, you see, I like that a lot more because I'm getting a lot more of this light gray, which was really underrepresented earlier. And then the other thing we can do is maybe move around, go back to, well, let's keep this highlighted. and then go back to rocks 1 and see maybe we can move those positions around and rotate stuff a little bit. Yeah, let's. Yeah, that's a little, yeah, because I don't want too many cracks. So I think I like that a little bit better. I'm not gonna expose these moving of the earth things, simply because we're already gonna, as it is, we already end up with a lot of exposed parameters, and it's a little overwhelming when you've got too much stuff. So sometimes you just want to make those decisions. Uh, these numbers, by the way, all this red will change as things go on. If by the end of the exercise we're still getting numbers we don't like, then we can do some optimization, but there's no point in worrying about this now. Okay, so let's make one of our other materials then, or one of the other maps rather, that we will eventually turn into something. So where are we? We did cracks. Let's do volcanic rock, which is relatively quick, and then we will do the stratified rock, and then it's on to the actual material where we will be using our library. So okay, let's make a new substance. And again, we're going to do empty, and we're going to do volcanic rock. Oh, come on, you. Okay. Right, so for this one, let's refer back to our original. So we're going to do a couple things here. We're going to create a depth mask, but we're also going to hang on to this mask as a mask. So we're going to get two things out of here. So we're going to need two black and whites, one of which is a mask, one of which is a height map. All right, so let's get the nodes out. Output. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. Okay, so first let's do our height map. And height map. And the next one we will make a mask. Yeah, mask. Okay. So the two noises I used were Dirt 5 and then Clouds 2. Okay. The Dirt 5, I'm not gonna, for this one, what I ended up doing was I did end up doing this. Because I want these big, because I don't want them to look like sand. I want them to look like bumps on rock. And the clouds is kind of good. We're going to combine these two to make it sort of, it's not completely flat. So for the clouds, I'm going to, again, make a pixel processor. So I'm going to do it again from scratch this time. I should actually make one of these and put it in the library for future use, because I do this often enough. Variables, we need to get float 2, we need sampler. Are we going to actually mess around with this? Now we're probably going to do it with constants, so let's get a float 2 and a float 1. And we're going to need an addition. And we're going to need a rotate. Okay, let's make it happen. So let's set that as the output node. We're going to make this $sign position. We're going to give ourselves the ability to move that position point, and we are going to also allow it to rotate by a certain angle. I think I had this set at -5, -0.5. Let's try that again. -0.5 by -0.5. And let's turn it 90 degrees and see what happens. So that's a quarter turn. Because what we want to do, and we're going to set this to grayscale output, we're going to blend these two. I want a sort of more even blend. So again, we're going to do that. And let's see what happens if we do lighten. Yeah, that's pretty good. You know, we just want some undulation. And then we can set the levels on this to better match this little guy up here. So let's set some levels up here. And now we're going to kind of try to mix the two of them into one texture. So let's get this more contrasty, because what maybe not that direction. What I want to happen is I want this to look like a relatively flat rock that has kind of pot marks in it. So again, I don't know what I did on my original. It's probably going to end up looking a bit different. Because remember, we can always invert it. Right now, those white dots are standing up if we're making a height map. We can always have them pot mark in, which I think is what I ended up doing. But that doesn't, you know, but right now we're just making that that node that we're going to put into our bigger graph. So, you know, we can take care of all of that in the bigger graph. What we need here is just a simple set of maps that we can build all that other information off of. So we can have this as our, let's put a little bit of a blur on it. No, actually, I had this completely backwards. Let me, because I wanted to at least more or less match. I had it a much lighter map. So yeah, it's kind of closer to what I had. That's what happens when you don't refer to your notes and you just start making stuff. I mean, it's fine. It's just not going to look exactly like what we had in the other one as well. And again, we're going to set this down very, very low. We just don't want it to be super extra sharp, so maybe like that. And again, we can always come back to these. Okay, just referring to my notes. Okay, what I did here was I put a blend, and this is going to be our mask. So let's mark it as such. I'm highlighting the node, and I'm right-clicking. I'm going to add a comment, and I'm going to highlight that, and then over here I can make a comment. So I'm just going to put this as mask. So we know that we're going to output that as a mask, because we're going to have other things that are happening downlined off of this, so it's not necessarily going to be the end of our chain here. We're going to use this as a mask. I meant to put in a blend. We're going to use this as a mask down here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of new. If you have it highlighted, it'll automatically try to help you out. I don't want too big a differential between these guys. Because let's move this. Okay, we can keep this lower one. I think that's fine. Foggy. We'll just up this one. We don't have to go all the way back for that. We're trying to get something here that's going to have some depth to it, but not too much. So I'm going to try to bring this, get this darker. And remember, I'm using this as a mask. So let's take a look at this and then play with those levels. I guess it's sharpening it up is probably a better, because I don't want too much sort of busyness going on in here. So I guess maybe a better description would be sort of simplifying it. Like that. And then we can make once we've got these two blended like this, we can make another level and then use this one to actually expose and set, which one would be the best, to actually set the contrast between the two. So I think I'm going to bring this up so it gets nice and white on top. And then we'll expose this one in the middle. We'll expose the mid-range. And as we move that up and down, it's going to get deeper. In other words, that differential is going to either get deeper or shallower. So that's what we'll do. So we'll call that volcanic rock depth. Let's make a input parameter for that. Let's give ourselves a little bit more room. So this is depth, and this will be volcanic rock. And the default, let's see what our default is right now. So we're on this one. So we're going to have it range, yeah, it's crazy to hardly anything at all. So we can set some clamps on that, but let's give it some tooth. So it's probably good right there. Maybe it's about mid-range. So if we want to see what that number is, we can go to values and we can double click, and I'm just copying that number. And then I'm going to go back to my input parameters off the main graph, and I double click on default, and I'm just going to paste that in there. So when we do switch over and expose this, it's not going to go kerplooey on us and go off to something that we haven't marked down that number. So let's just expose it, and there we are. It stays the same because we put the right number in. And so again, let's make a comment, add comment, and we'll call this depth. So we've got our which is, well, depth slash, let's call it height. Because I think I mentioned before, later on, I used these internal height maps to differentiate between the sort of overall height of a piece of rock and sort of the height of the details. But if I ever use it again, I want to kind of know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to call it height. And then this one is my mask. So I'm going to just put that straight in there. So that's done. Have we exposed this? No, we have not. Actually, we don't need to expose it because there's nothing really we're going to change about this one. Okay, so that's this one done. Let's save it. So we can save the file. And we're in Substance Demo Ground. Volcanic Rock goes in ground. And then we can also publish it. Okay. So I believe we only have one more to go, which is this stratified rock, which kind of has a lot going on. There's a couple of nodes that we haven't talked about yet that go on in here. I don't think we've done a directional warp before, and I don't even know if we've done any warps before. So we're going to do warps, and we're going to have a transform 2D in here. And I think those are the only two nodes I haven't spoken about yet. So that'll probably take up another video, and then after that we're ready to rock and roll with the main map.